Okay, again, thank you for the introduction and good afternoon. And I think still afternoon in the Philippines. So, this is the third consecutive training that I conducted, or I will be, in this case, I will be conducting. And in line with the two previous trainings, this is just a continuation of the trainings. And primarily, the focus of this particular training is about the risk management um, and probably specifically covering the ISO 31000 standard. Of course, there are different types of or different standards also as far as risk management is concerned. There is COSO and others enterprise risk management approach. But since we normally go through the ISO standard um, mode of to call this certification, so I decided to discuss about the risk management in line with the ISO 31001 standard. Now, the this particular training, we expect that we at the end of this training we should understand the concept of risk. Although partially it has been discussed already in the last training. However, um, for recall and just for to relate it into the ISO 31001 standard, we will again be discussing about the concept of risk. Also, we will need to understand at the end of this training the principles, the framework, and the process of risk management in line with the ISO standard. And last but not the least, of course, we need to appreciate the various techniques for each stage of risk assessment. Um, Papasintabi na po ako kasi this particular ISO standard is not a certifiable standard, meaning wala itong an organization will not be certified for an ISO 31001 standard. So, which means that this ISO 31 standard is only as a guidance, meaning pinapatupad ito ng ISO in order for us to uh, assist and assist us in the development of risk management system in our companies. Second thing na pinapa-umpisa ko na, um, malawak itong risk management. Probably you have heard the words risk assessment and these things when we are discussing about um, ISO 45001, which is the new standard for occupational health and safety management system. Probably you have heard about environmental risk management, environmental risk when we are discussing about ISO 14001 standard, which is related to environmental management system. And of course, quality for those who are involved in the quality management system, there is also risk assessment involved in the ISO 9001 standard. However, when the ISO organization was convened and decided to have a common adaptable ISO format, so what happened is they decided to have um, we can say an overall adaptable risk management approach that covers all of this type of management systems which I discussed or I mentioned. So, malawak po ito. Um, Hindi lahat po ng organization ay meron nito. Actually, if I still remember, iilan lang at mostly nasa, sabihin natin more or less, from medium to large organizations or multi-level organizations or multinational organizations only cater the risk management approach. First, probably because it's not certifiable. So it means it's like an option. Second, it requires really due resources and diligence and commitment from the top management in order for us to have this. However, for those companies that really have this, they adapted it because they know that at the end it will help their organization to achieve their intended outcome or their objectives. Now, um, let us now go through the details of this risk management standard. Now, the first question is, what is ISO 31000? It is an international standard that provides principles and generic guidelines on risk management. So, in short, it will just provide us with the generic approach on how we need to manage our risk. Okay, later on we'll define what is risk, and then the common connotation of when someone hears about risk, and what is supposed to be the right approach when we hear about the definition or the terminology risk. Also, ISO 31000 is not specific to any industry or sector. So, which means that from healthcare industry, oil and gas, construction industry, manufacturing, food industry, hotel and restaurant management, all of these type of industries or even specific sectors can adopt this ISO 31000. And also, it can also be applied to any type of risk in that particular sector or industry. So may it be under the aspect of the financial aspect of the organization, the safety aspect of the organization, the environmental or the project aspect of the organization. So therefore, um, uh, it all depends on how or where you will be applying this particular standard. Now, the next also is it can also be applied to any type of organization. As what I said, typically you can see this risk management approach on medium to large scale industries or organization. But it is not only limited to that. It can also be applied to small to medium size organization. And last but not the least, it can be applied to organization activities, especially at the decision making level. Okay, so typically this is being applied at different levels, but mainly also involving the decision making aspect of that particular level. So it can be at the corporate level, or we can say normally we call that strategic level, on the mid management level, which we normally call it a tactical level, and on the operational level, or those who are dealing with the operations. Okay. Now, in discussing the risk management, we should understand that there are three paradigms that have been interlinked with one another to define the overall risk management standard. The one which we normally familiar with, which is ISO 31000 of 2018 version, is actually just a guideline, meaning it is just how we need to develop and implement the risk management standard. Okay, actually, this is just a second revision of this particular standard because the first ISO 31000 was developed on 2009. Then the terminologies that normally incorporated in the guideline, in the risk management guideline, are primarily taken from the ISO Guide of 73 of 2009. So the terminologies that we are going to encounter later on are all coming from this particular guide. And with regards to the actual risk assessment methodologies, these are all that came from the IEC 31010 of 2019 standard. So these are the risk assessment techniques that we will going to encounter when we are dealing with ISO 31000. Now, what is the objective of this standard? The objective is obviously to help the organization increase the likelihood of achieving its objective. Whether the objective is at the organizational level, or objective on the departmental level, depending on on the scope of the department, or the sectoral level, or operational level, or the project level. So the objective of this standard is to increase the likelihood of achieving the objective. The next is to improve the identification of opportunities and threats and effectively allocate and use resources for risk treatment, because not all risks are obvious. There are risks that are hidden, which needs to be identified using the right techniques or methodology in order for us to capture the threat and convert that into opportunities, and to allocate the necessary resources and use these resources in order to treat or remedy the risk on favor of the organization. Okay, as I said, later on, risk is not always negative. Later on, we'll come to know what's the definition of risk is. Now, risk is actually by definition effect of uncertainty on objectives as per this particular standard. If you'll notice, the definition of risk in other standards like in ISO 9001, in 14001, and in the 45001, it is only limited to effect of uncertainty. Here, it was very specific on objectives. Okay? Why? Because, as I said, this risk management standard covers all other specific type of standards that may fall into that falls into this particular management system. Kasi sabi nga natin, itong risk na to, pwedeng i-apply to sa financial, pwede itong i-apply sa safety, sa environment. So, if we will cover all of those standards pertaining to those specific risks, this is the overall management system of that risk involved, of those risks involved. So, bakit siya specific only for objective dito sa particular standard na to? Kasi doon sa doon sa 45,001, if you notice, effect of uncertainty siya. Pero alam mo na yung scope lang ng management system na yun is only limited to occupational health and safety. So from the start, there's already a boundary on that particular management system. At ang effect ng uncertainty na yun is related obviously to the occupational health and safety. So the objective of the organization when the organization adopted the ISO 45001 is to achieve its intended outcome, and which is to improve the occupational health and safety of the organization. So ando doon na agad, define agad yung objective ng 45001 standard eh. So hindi niya na, it will be redundant o paulit-ulit lang kung sasabihin niya na effect of uncertainty on objective sa 45,001, samantalang alam mo naman kung ano yung objective ng 45,001, which is only limited to occupational health and safety. I hope that you're getting my point. The same principle applies to environmental management system. Alam natin ang 14,001 is only limited to the environmental management of the organization. So, hindi mo na kailangan banggitin na effect on objective kasi alam mo naman kaya mo ginamit yung 14,001 is primarily the objective is to improve the environmental management system of the company. However, because this risk management ISO 31,000 covers spectrum of risk in the organization, different type of risk have different objectives. Meaning, iba yung objective ng kumpanya pagdating sa financial aspect niya. Iba yung objective ng kumpanya pagdating sa safety aspect niya. Ganon din sa environment, ganon din sa quality, sa production. In short, each and every aspect of the organization may have duplicated objectives. So at the end, you need to be very specific. That's the reason why binanggit na effect of uncertainty on objectives. And definition of objective is it can be positive or negative. If you look at this graph, yung arrow na yan is actually the direction or of the performance of the company. This is actually a graph between the performance and time. Your objective is to reach from this point, you reach from this point to this point. Di ba? Sabi nga, the shortest possible distance between 2 points is a line. And this is that, no? Ito yung objective mo to define a certain level of performance at a certain period of time. Now, however, if this expectation is not met, either it deviates above this or lower than this, then that means that is what we call the effect. It can be positive or it can be negative. That's why risk can be positive, can be negative. So, ibig sabihin lang nun, ito yung expectation mo, tumaas dito, ibig sabihin, maganda yung epekto sa organization. The effect is positive. Otherwise, it should be negative. So uncertainty, as like I said last time, is actually a state wherein due to the deficiency of information or understanding of the subject matter or the knowledge or the event or its likelihood, meron kang hindi alam eh. Either kulang ka ng impormasyon, hindi sapat yung information, or hindi mo maintindihan dahil hindi ka competent to understand the subject matter, or you are not familiar with what will be the outcome of that or the chances that it will happen. All of this will come into picture when you define your risk. Kaya ka nagkakaroon ng risk kasi hindi ka sigurado. So, the objective can have different aspects and categories and can be applied at different level. It can be, like as I said, it can be an objective to your production, in your financial status of the company, in the safety, quality, even health aspect of your company, especially now about the mental health. So maraming aspeto yung objective ng kumpanya. Now, ISO 31000 consists of actually three pillars. Ito ang bumubuo ng ISO 31000. Which means na there should be principles that needs to be satisfied by the organization that wants to implement the ISO 31001 standard. Then these principles requires framework, and this framework inside that, in order to what is operating inside that is what we call the process. Hindi ito kaibahan sa isang bahay. 'Di ba, sa isang bahay, pag meron ka, ang una dapat meron kayong pinagkakasunduan, meron kayong common understanding. Alam niyo kung ano yung bawal, alam niyo hindi, at yun normally dinidefine ng magulang. Okay? Now, dami nga, hindi tahanan yung isang bahay kung walang physical structure, no? So the physical structure ng bahay, ito yung framework, no? And sometimes may intangible aspect naman din ng ng bahay, wherein yung mga values and principles as or values and beliefs na dinefine ng magulang sa atin, no? And in order for us to operate harmoniously inside our home, kailangan may set of process tayong kailangan sundin. Okay? So, lahat ito ay interdependent with each other. Meaning, when something happen in the principles, it affects the process as well as the framework. Likewise, when there is something wrong with the framework, it affects the principles as well as the process, and vice versa. Okay, so they are interdependent with each other. When something is touched or changed, the others will also be affected. Okay, you will notice the interdependency only. This is the framework and the process. The principles is actually affecting both the framework and the process. Just to correct what I said. Okay, now let's go to the individual pillars. So, ito po yung nagre-represent ng ating ng ating principles na ISO 31000. So it means that an organization wanting to implement an ISO 31000 standard needs to be integrated. So therefore, ang importante dito, kailangan ma-integrate sa existing system. Ibig sabihin, hindi siya gumagalaw, or that the 31001 management system should not work alone. should be integral or inad mo siya doon sa existing system ng organization. Okay? And it should be structured and comprehensive. It's customized because it depends upon the complexity of the organization. Hindi naman po pwedeng yung risk management system na ginagamit ng Shell ay adapt mo sa isang small manufacturing company. No? Kailangan customize siya. It should be inclusive, so meaning lahat involved. Dynamic kasi nga may involvement ng tao rito, no? Human factor and social factors also play into great importance here. So may culture aspect to. So nagbabago-bago siya. So kailangan adaptable nga, katulad ng sabi ko rito, inclusive and customized. And best available information, kailangan laging may up to date access of information. Kasi ang risk na ina-encounter natin dito ay dynamic. Hindi ito lang basta ngayon lang nangyayari. It is progressing. Classic example, if there is katulad na nangyari itong pandemic, we need to know the accurate information in order to evaluate or assess the risk of the impact of this pandemic. At the same time, yung implication nito sa supply chain natin, sa raw materials natin, sa market natin, sa yung market risk na tinatawag. So lahat ito nagbabago. For example, on the financial aspect, marami kang, dati ikaw lang ang nagsusupply ng ganitong produkto, tapos nagkaroon ka ng competitions, may competitors ka na. And these competitors will not just simply stand by and look at you. No? They will try to outperform. Hindi ka lang gagayahin, they will outperform. So it means these are dynamic risks na involved. And of course, there's a human and cultural factors, as what I said. So lahat ito, the purpose is to value creation and protection. By knowing all of this, pinoprotektahan mo yung value. Of course, kinikreate mo muna yung value, but at the same time, you are trying to protect what has been developed or what has been established by the organization. So the purpose is the creation and protection of value as it improves performance, encourages innovation, and supports the achievement of objectives. So nakikita mo to kadalasan itong mga words na innovation, support, achievement of objectives, improves performance. Normally nakikita nyo to sa yung terminology entrepreneurship o entrepreneur. Typical kasi ang ating pananaw or our understanding when we call about the entrepreneur is ito yung mga maliliit or mga individuals or small groups na nagtayo ng business, tapos yun yung kasi typical na nakikita natin sa TV, no? Entrepreneur, ito yung mga maliliit na nag-umpisa, tapos but actually entrepreneur is actually embedded even in existing organization, even large organization. Kaya yung word na enterprise is actually rooted from entrepreneur. And that is because in enterprise, which is entrepreneur, there is already risk involved. Kaya ka nagtatry magbukas ng business kahit sa panahon ngayon, because you're trying to achieve something. There's an objective on your part. At hindi lang laging ang entrepreneur ay outside of the organization, no? Na parang bago lang siya, no? Hindi gano'n, no? You can implement entrepreneurship even inside the existing organization. Okay? Ang tawag nila doon, intrapreneur or intrapreneurship. Normally, ito yung ginagamit ng mga existing organization para mag-improve yung kanilang business. Meron silang problema dun sa business, kailangan nilang solven, mag-iisip sila, no? Either mag-adapt ba sila ng bagong produkto, i-enhance nila yung existing na product. So, in short, you are targeting an existing problem and you're trying to improve the existing system. Yun yung ginawa ko ngayon na nagtitesis. Actually, nung tinapos ko na yung thesis ko dun sa MBA ko. And that is actually what I did. No, I took a problem from an existing organization and tried to improve that by providing solution. So, ang tawag that intrapreneurship, no? Okay, so these principles provide guidance on the characteristics of effective and efficient risk management. Take note, it's effective and efficient. So when you say effective, gumagana siya, it serves its purpose or its design. Efficient because may time element dito, no? Kasi nga nagbabago, dynamic siya, eh, no? Hindi pa pwede na makontento ka lang kung na-achieve mo yung objective mo. Kailangan din bounded ka ng oras kasi yung mga, sabi nga nila, kapag hindi mo ginawa ito, if you have a chance, di ba ganun sa business, if you have a chance and you did not grab that opportunity, someone will take over that. And so this is the guidance, no, to have an effective and efficient risk management and communicating its value and explaining its intention and purpose. Okay, to give you the complete information about all of these principles, I later on, or probably as an additional understanding, I would encourage everyone to read the ISO 31001 standard para mas malaman niyo yung mismong kabuuan ng nilalaman. May description bawat isa na itong principles na to. Kaya lang mahaba masyado kapag inisa-isa ko pa. Now, let's go to the framework. Framework, sabi natin, kaya tinawag framework, it is a structure. Dito napapaloob yung risk management. At gaya ng kahit na anong bahay, kapag mahina yung structure, magko-collapse yan. No? So it means na um, hawak mo yung principles, mula doon sa principles na yon, itatayo mo ngayon yung risk management ng kumpanya using this framework. These elements of the framework are very important to ensure that the risk management process will perform its function. So again, mapasok pa rin dito yung integration. As I said, kailangan well integrated siya sa bawat aspeto ng organization mo. No? Sabihin, I'll just cite you an example in human resources, sa hiring process. No? Dapat incorporated yung risk management doon pagdating doon sa, for example, naghahanap ka ng yung mga tao ngayon, no? Uh, may isa akong nabasa na article na after this pandemic, there might be another type of pandemic. Ang tawag nila talent pandemic. Kasi yung mga tao daw kasi na naiwan sa kumpanya ngayon, na you can say, luckily, still nagtatrabaho, there will be a point na mababurn out na sila kasi sila na lang sila yung nagtatrabaho, no? Naubos, nabawasan na yung manpower, nag-double, triple or multiple tasking sila hanggang sa napagod na sila, either mag-resign sila or maghanap sila ng bagong trabaho. Ando doon yung titingnan mo na rin yung remuneration packages o yung sahod nila, masyadong pinigana. All these things, ang mangyayari na ito, kung ano yung kumpanya na nag-alaga doon sa mga tao, which is, for me, I always believe on that the greatest asset of any organization or any business is the human asset, ay babalikan yan, no? Kapag may oras na at kapag may kakayahan na yung mga tao na lumipat ng trabaho at nakita nila maganda itong kumpanyang ito dahil sa experiences ng mga taong naka-encounter during this pandemic, mag-aalisan yan doon sa dati at lilipat yun doon sa magagandang kumpanya. No? Yung sinasabi nilang talent pandemic. So it means that this type of dynamic risk, kung ikaw ay kumpanya, dapat ito initingnan mo. Hindi ka lang makukontento na ay okay lang yan, ay yung mentalidad na madaling maghanap ng empleyado, mga ganon, di ba? Na madaling magbawas at madaling maghanap at maraming naghahanap ng trabaho, especially here in the Middle East. Hindi yun laging work. If you want to have a sustainable organization, hindi mo yun basta hayaang mangyari. No? So another is about the design, implementation, evaluation, and improvement. So lahat ito na framework na to, na part ng risk management, needs to be considered. And the purpose of this is to assist the organization in integrating risk management into significant activities and function. Okay? And the effectiveness of the risk management depends on its integration into the governance, including decision making, which requires support from stakeholders, particularly top management. So that's why yung pinakagitna nito is about leadership and commitment. Kasi hindi naman magkakaroon ng necessary resources for the risk management to take place kung hindi naniniwala yung top management about this standard, about this management system, and walang commitment sila na to support. Okay? So, that is the second pillar. The third pillar, which we will discuss in detail, kasi ito na mismo talaga yung risk management system, no, is about the risk management process. This should be an integral part of the management and decision making and integrated into the structure, yung framework, no? Operations, processes of the organization. It can be at the strategic level, meaning pag sinabi mong strategic level, from the word strategy, sino ba nag-strategize? Normally, yung mga nasa taas. They are those who have a bird's eye view, an overview of how the organization works. So sila yung nakakaalam kung ano yung current status of the organization. Sila din nakakaalam kung ano yung market outlook ng organization, meaning ano ba nag-i-improve ba as far as the marketability, yung products and services. Lahat ng ito nalalaman ng nasa taas. Plus obviously dahil sila yung may authority to decide. So they are the one who strategize. They create strategies in order for them to achieve their objective. Mag-expand ba tayo ngayon? Magbabawas ba tayo ng tao ngayon? Magdadagdag ba tayo ng product line? Dati dito lang tayo sa produktong ito. Ngayon mag-expand ba tayo? Do we need to expand our presence sa ibang parte ng mundo? All these things are part of strategies of the top management. And all of these strategies have incorporated or inherent risk. May risk involved sa bawat yun. Magbawas ka, baka bigla-bigla na lang mga ilangan ka ng tao because biglang dumami yung orders. Paano na mangyayari doon? Mag-expand ka, so ibig sabihin magbabawas ka ng capital mo, paano kung malugi? All these things are part of strategic risk kasi base yun doon sa strategy ng top management. Operational, ito yung mga day-to-day activities. Meron kang operation, ginagawa mo, and obviously, meron mga risk involved yan. Program or project level, so depending upon the duration of the program or the project. So the dynamic nature and the variable nature of the human being and the culture, kasi human being din naman ang nagde-define ng kultura, should be considered throughout the risk management process. Okay? Kasi bakit kamo? Remember, pinag-uusapan natin dito, risk management system, but sino ba ang involved dito to define to define and to implement yung risk management? Di ba tao din? So, ibig sabihin, kapag hindi, if the people involved in the risk management process are not competent, equipped, or even biased in the first place, depending on their objective, maapektuhan yung buong risk management. No? Ibig sabihin, parang etong taong ito, meron, I just gave you an example. When I was new here, my cousin was the one who brought me here in UAE. Nagtatrabaho siya noon sa Danata, sa ticketing ng Danata. Yung general manager ng Danata during the time decided to resign and build his own ticketing agent, ticketing company, something like that. Yung parang tourism, yung Air Arabian, parang Air Arabian ng yung mga sand dunes, mga ganun. That was 2005, 2006. And during that time, yun yung booming time ng Dubai noon na ang daming pumupunta mga tao rito at ilan lang ang mga ganong klase ng business na available. So, if that general manager is part of this risk management, he may have an bias do sa decision making. No? Because at the end pala magkakaroon siya ng sarili niyang business similar to that. No? Naging competitor pa siya ng Denata. No? So, ito yung mga classic example that the human behavior and the culture of the organization must be considered when we are defining the risk management process. Now, let's go to the specifics. Papansinin ninyo, the first one is we need to define the scope, context, and criteria. Okay? Gaya ng lahat ng management system, we need to define this kasi ito yung boundary natin. Ibig sabihin, pag boundary, tangible or intangible uh, limit para para alam mo kung ano lang yung focus of attention mo. So, in defining the scope, purpose and scope actually ito, no? You need to first define what's the purpose of doing the risk management. Part of the risk management is doing the risk assessment actually, no? So, bakit mo kailangan gumawa ng risk assessment? Yun ang unang tanong, no? Is it a client requirement? Is it for compliance requirement? Is it just to achieve a certain specific objective for a certain project? So, ano yung objective mo? Ano yung purpose mo? No? You need to define that. Now, you need also to define the level of decisions or actions to be taken. Mangangailangan ba to ng involvement ng nasa taas, on the strategic level, or it can be deal with at the management level, which is tactical level, or it can be within the boundaries of the operational level. And you need to define also who are the decision makers of this and the stakeholders. Na stakeholders, ito may pakialam dun sa organization, whether internal, katulad ng mga empleyado, or external, katulad ng mga investors, ng mga bangko na nagbibigay ng ano no ng pautang, or sabihin natin yung mga insurance companies na nagbibigay ng insurance sa kumpanya. Regulators, kasi syempre na may concern sila kung nagpa-comply kasi dun sa batas. No? Lahat ng ito ay mga stakeholders. And you need to consider also whether the time horizon. Short term ba to kasi for specific project lang ba ito or program? Mid-term or long term? So ano yung purpose niya? No? And then also what you are expecting, your output. Is it a qualitative, meaning subjective ito, no? Descriptive lang ito? Based on the assessment and opinion or intelligent, so we can say intelligent opinion of those people involved. Can be quantitative, meaning numerical ito, means you require valid and you can say valid and evaluate the data, numerical data to conduct this part of this kind of risk assessment. It can be semi-quantitative, yung normally nakikita natin na risk assessment approach ng 45,001 na may mga risk rating matrix na may assignment ka ng 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 na may ganon. That is what you call semi-quantitative. No? Hindi siya purely quantitative kasi may aspeto doon na magde-decide ka lang no? Based on your understanding and your knowledge. No? It is represented as number, but technically speaking, hindi naman siya na-generate out of your data. An example of that is, di ba sa ating risk assessment matrix sa health and safety, no? Minsan ilalagay mo dun sa level of severity, for example, mild, o kaya medical, or for example, so assessment mo lang yon. Wala kang pinaghugutan na data na sabihin mo for the last 5 years kinolekta mo tapos sa ganitong activity ito yung na-come out mo na posibleng mangyari. That particular process is quantitative kasi meron kang pinaghugutang historical basis, no? Pero when you are trying to evaluate an outcome based on your understanding, based on your opinion, that is subject for discussion. Subjective yun, and that is partly qualitative. That's the reason why that particular approach is actually what we call semi-quantitative. Or it can be either qualitative or quantitative. So this is how we define the purpose of the risk assessment. Now, of course, we need to define and understand the context, no? So the scope should also be not only the scope, the context here, no? It is also including the scope. The scope, depth, and level of detail of assessment must be defined. And normally, yung context, pag sinabi mong context, ano bang simpleng pagkakaintindi natin? Kasi naririnig natin tong context of the organization kahit sa 14,001, sa 45,001. Pag sinabi mong context, ito yung kasalukuyang sitwasyon ng organization as far as that particular management system is concerned. So, ibig sabihin, kung sa 45,001 at pinag-uusapan natin ay context of the organization ng occupational health and safety, ito yung current situation ng organization as far as the occupational health and safety is concerned. Yun. Okay? So, it means when we define the external and internal context of the organization in line with this risk management, now considering it is a huge risk management approach, we need to consider a wider scope of how it is being defined. So sa risk management ng 31,001, normally pagka gusto nating malaman yung external context, of course from the word external, sa labas ng organization, na makakaapekto sa organization. Take note of this. Why we define the external and internal context? Kasi ito yung mga factors na makakaapekto sa organization, whether direct or indirect. So for the case of external context, we normally use a PESEL analysis. Ano yung PESEL? PESEL stands for Political, Economic, Social, Technological, Legal, and Environment. Meaning, katulad yan, sa bansang Pilipinas na kung saan ang leaders ng bansa ay hinahalal, kada nagbabago ng administrasyon, malaki ang risk na involved ng mga kumpanya nandun. Kasi maaaring ngayon okay ang kanilang business, bukas makalawa hindi na kasi maaaring hindi sila kaalyado or they may not be in favor with the current administration. So madali siya, so may maapektuhan. No? Likewise, on the economic side, as we all know, when the World Trade Organization has started yung globalization na to, lahat ang mundo ay lumiit, no? Yung produkto ng Amerika hindi lang limited sa Amerika at ganun din sa China at ganun din sa ibang bansa, no? So ibig sabihin, the level of competition as far as the products and services concerned of the business is not only within the physical boundary of the country where you're residing. So kapag mahina yung quality, yung hindi competitive yung produkto at yung serbisyo mo, tatalunin ka. And that is on the economic side. Social, ibig sabihin, yung mga taong gumagamit, no? Baka yung in-expect mo na tatangkilik ng iyong produkto ay hindi na pala, no? Classic example of that is nung mga unang panahon, hindi naman sobrang unang panahon, pero um, there was a time na namamayagpag ang Nokia. Sikat ka pa nga kapag Finland din. At ang pinaka sabihin natin, challenging and sophisticated. Take note of the adjectives. Challenging and sophisticated game ay snake. Okay, na nagkanda na pud-pud-pud-pud na yung daliri at nawala na yung kulay ng keypad kakagawa mo. But dahil nangyari na na hindi na foresee ng Nokia na hindi niya pwedeng ma-maintain yung ganung level of competitiveness, tinalo siya ni Steve Jobs, no, na create ng smartphone, ng iPhone. So, ito yung mga factor na dapat consider. Part yun yung technological, yung legal, of course. Lahat tayo kumikilos based on the perspective of legal compliance. Magbago yung batas, patay nga. For example, dito sa UAE, bibili ka ng property. Sa ngayon, pag bumili ka ng property worth 1 million to 2 million, automatic meron ka ng residence visa for life. No? Parang gano'n. Kaya lang, gano'n din kung gano'n kabilis mag-develop dito ng batas, gano'n din kabilis ka mag-develop, ay magbura ng batas dito. No? So, paano na kung meron kang property dito? No? Paano mo siya huhugutin all of a sudden? So that is a legal aspect. And of course, environment. When it says environment, hindi lang siya environment na environment na puno, halaman, although part of that environment is even working environment. Lahat ito tinitingnan mo sa external context. On the internal context naman, ito na, no? Ginagamit natin yung SWOT analysis or the strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. Dito natin tinitingnan yung internal systems we have in the organization, yung procedures natin, yung existing management system natin, all of these things are being taken care of. Okay? Ganun ba yung mga strengths niya, ano yung weakness niya, opportunity, and threat. Sa lahat ng to. So this is the context of the organization. Well, mag-iisang oras na pala ako, dito pa lang ako. Bibilisan ko na. Nasa risk criteria pa lang ako. No? Risk criteria are this nature and type of uncertainties that can affect the outcome. And normally, you define it by how the consequences and likelihood will be defined and measured. No? And the time-related factor, how the level of risk is determined, how it will be decided whether the risk is acceptable. Kasi gaya ng sa occupational health and safety natin, no, na hindi lahat ng risk ina-accept natin. May certain level na sinabing, okay, pagka ganito ang risk level mo, ito ay medium level. Ito high ito very high, ito low. So how we define those kind of risk assessment, risk level, isa yon. And the combinations and sequences of multiple risk will be taken into account. Meaning, hindi lang pala dapat tayo nakatutok sa isang klase ng risk. Kasi sa totoo lang, in reality, hindi mo naman ma-isolate ang risk. Okay? Lahat yan magkakadugtong. One way or another, kaya nga dapat ang pagka-evaluate natin ng risk, we need to go beyond what is the common or obvious kasi hindi natin alam na may epekto yun sa ibang klase ng aspeto ng organization. Okay? Hindi lang sinabing pag ikaw ay hindi nag-comply sa ganitong batas ay compliance risk lang yun. Hindi. Kasi apektado din yung reputation mo. So, reputational risk din siya. Apektado din yung product mo dahil syempre kung hindi maganda yung reputation mo, yung productivity mo rin, hindi din magiging okay. So, everything is interrelated or interdependent with each other. Now, these are the descriptions of the characteristics of different techniques that we are going to use when we do the risk assessment. Excuse me. Sorry. There is a technique depending on how this is being used in the risk assessment. To elicit views lang ba? Ibig sabihin, kunin mo lang ba yung information or yung pananaw ng tao? Kailangan lang ba tong technique na to identify the risk or to analyze the cause or analyze the control? So ito yung on the part of application. On the scope side, ito bang technique na to will cover the organizational level or department or project level or process or equipment level? And ito bang technique na to ay long-term, medium-term, or short-term as far as the risk assessment is concerned? And in this risk assessment technique, is this the decision should be made at the strategic level, meaning at the corporate level, or at the management level lang, tactical, or operational lang? At kapag ginawa ko tong technique na to do the risk assessment, gaano kadaming information kailangan ko? High, medium, low, or none at all? At yung gagawa ng risk assessment technique na to, gaano siya ka-expert? Yung pwede ba na low level lang, wherein ayon lang sa pagkakaintindi ng tao o ayon lang sa pananaw ng tao, intuitive yun, no? Or having only 1 to 2 days training? O kailangan ba ng taong involved na merong more than 2 days training to do the risk assessment technique? Or the person should have a high significant training or specialist or expert on the subject matter? And the technique, is it qualitative or quantitative or semi-quantitative? And how difficult it is to apply this technique, which involves the time, the cost, the resources, whether it's high, medium, and low. So, ito yung mga characteristics ng mga techniques na gagamitin ng isang organization to do the risk assessment as far as risk management 31,000 is concerned. So isipin niyo yung ginagawa natin na risk assessment ng occupational health and safety at yung environmental at yung quality, ito ay mga parte lang ng risk management ng ISO 31000. Okay? Now, what are the common techniques? I just chose the techniques among the list of techniques. Sabi ko nga, makikita mo ito sa IEC 31010 of 2019. Okay? Just to give you an idea, ito siya. Ganito siya kakapal. Okay? So, this is the international standard covering all of those techniques that we will be discussing. Obviously, I will not be discussing in detail kasi abutin tayo ng baka 3 araw. And the good thing about this guide, binibigay niya rito kung ano yung definition ng technique, para saan siya gagamitin, ano yung kailangan niyang input o information para magawa yon, ano yung output niya, whether qualitative or quantitative or semi-quantitative, at ano yung strengths and weaknesses niya. Okay? Now, to give you an idea, ito yon. No? To elicit view, ibig sabihin, to gather information para makakuha ka ng idea sa mga stakeholder mo. On the basis of the scope, context, and criteria, normally ginagamit itong mga to. Brainstorming. Siguro naman lahat alam kung ano ibig sabihin ng brainstorming. No? It is an open discussion ng kahit na sino. Walang mali during the brainstorming. It is actually a divergent principle or divergent aspect. Pag sinabing divergent, naghihiwalay, di ba? Sabihin, as many options, the more the merrier, kumbaga, na ideas. Yun ang brainstorming. No? Walang mali. No? So, kaya lang, ang problema sa brainstorming, kapag hindi magaling yung facilitator, baka magsabog-sabog yung at saka baka magkaroon ng argument. No? Pero technically speaking, yung brainstorming is just to gather information. Yung Delphi technique naman, ito naman ay almost similar to brainstorming. Ang kaibahan lang ng Delphi technique, hindi kayo openly nagsasabi sa isa't isa kung ano yung idea nyo. Sinusulat niyo sa isang papel base doon sa nagsisirculate na question. So there are a series of questions na ginawa bago pa man mag-meeting. And each and every expert will give his or her own decision on that, whether accept ba yun o hindi ba yun o ano yung comment. Tapos pag kukolektahin yun, pag-uusapan, then magdidesisyonan kung tatanggapin ba o hindi, then iikot na naman yung another set of question hanggang sa maubos siya. Yun yung Delphi technique. No? And obviously, we can make use of interviews and surveys to gather information. That is what we call techniques for eliciting views. Now, in order for us to do the risk identification, okay, take note of this. Ito yung maaaring na nakakapag-confuse sa mga tao, lalo na those people who are familiar with Occupation Health and Safety Management System, yung 45,001. Naririnig nyo kasi yung word na risk sa 45,001 or kahit nung sa 18,001, ang akala ng iba parehas lang to, no? Dito, ang ina-identify sa 31,000, ang ina-identify natin dito ay risk. Okay? Sa 45,001 and even sa 18,001, ang ina-identify natin hazard. Hazard that may have a potential, okay, to harm. So meaning, ang cause and effect relationship doon ay hazard will cause having a consequence. At yung severity at likelihood ng consequence ay yun yung risk. Yun yung sa 45,001. Yun yung sa 18,001 dati. Dito, ang ina-identify natin ngayon dito, risk na, hindi yung hazard. The risk to the organization. Ngayon, anong klaseng risk ang ina-identify natin? Gaya nga ng sinabi ko sa umpisa pa lang, there are various types of risk. Pwedeng financial risk, pwedeng market risk, pwedeng safety risk, environmental risk, quality risk, productivity risk, compliance risk, reputational risk. Lahat ng klase ng risk kailangan nating ma-identify. At ano nga yung uli yung risk? Risk is an effect of due to uncertainty to achieve its objective. May objective ka sa financial, hindi mo na-achieve. Risk yun. May objective ka sa safety, hindi mo na-achieve. May risk doon. Na-achieve mo, hindi mo na-achieve, risk yun, no? Kasi positive or negative. So the purpose of risk identification in ISO 31000 is to find, recognize, and describe risks that might help or prevent an organization achieving its objective. The risk should be relevant, appropriate, and up to date. It requires up to date information. So, napaka-importante kapag ka dinidefine mo yung risk mo o in-identify mo yung risk mo na dapat sufficient at valid and up-to-date yung information mo. Kasi maaaring nag-evaluate ka ng risk, yun pala obsolete o outdated na yung mga information mo. No? The organization should identify risk whether or not their sources are under its control. Kaya nga pati external stakeholder mo kailangan mong alamin yung risk eh. Kahit yung competitor mo, alamin mo yung risk eh. So these are risks that are beyond the control of the organization. Pero hindi mo may kakailan na may epekto to sa organization mo. Okay? Classic example, itong pandemic, sino bang may control dito? But we need to identify this risk and this kind of risk. At ano yung dapat natin gawin para makasurvive the organization to manage the risk. Next is consideration should be given that they be more than one type of outcome, which may result in variety of tangible or intangible consequences. Maaring isa lang ang risk mo, pero napakarami ng epekto niya. No? So marami siyang resulta, tangible, intangible consequences. Okay? Now, what are the techniques that normally being used in the risk identification? Siyempre, dahil kailangan mo mag-identify para kumuha ka ng idea, ginagamit pa rin yung brainstorming at saka yung Delphi technique. Although, initially, ginamit ito dun sa pag-define mo ng scope, criteria mo, purpose and criteria, kailangan mo rin siyempre maghanap muna ng information. And normally, it is through brainstorming and Delphi technique. Now, to identify risk, normally we normally use, pumili lang ako sa napakarami, pero ito yung familiar kasi ako at the same time, na-share ko na rin ito last time. It's about failure mode effect analysis or failure mode critical analysis, FEMECA, and as well as hazard operability study. So dito kasi, ina-evaluate mo yung sistema at sistema, proseso, or yung design ng project mo, and you're trying to identify kung saan siya pwedeng magkamali. And yun yung risk. No? So, yun yung failure mode effect analysis as well as hazard operability study. And to determine the sources and causes and drivers of risk, we normally do the fishbone diagram or the Ishikawa method. Na kung saan, di ba doon, define natin, meron sa certain product, sa dulo, yung ulo ng isda. Tapos may mga fish bones ka kung saan yun yung mga aspects to consider like machine, manpower, machineries, so all those things. And then, bawat fish bone na yun, ilalagay mo kung ano mga causes or sources of risk. So yun yung technique na ginagamit dito. No? Sa risk identification. Now, after na-identify mo na yung risk, of course, you need to analyze it. And actually, this is you can say, the most critical part of the risk assessment. Kasi, dito, you will see the purpose is to comprehend. Ibig sabihin, para maintindihan mo yung nature of risk and its characteristics and risk level. Kasi hindi mo mamamanage ang risk kung hindi mo siya naintindihan unang-una. Saan ba siya galing? Anong klase ba siyang risk? Okay? At gaano kataas yung risk level dun sa organization. It involves detailed consideration of uncertainty. Gaano ba kalaki yung level of uncertainty? Masyado ba talaga bang wala tayong alam doon as far as the organization is concerned? Or kakaunti lang ang alam natin? Kaya ng katulad nitong pandemic, wala tayong alam. Totally. Clueless. So what are the risk sources? Okay? Risk sources are normally an element which alone or in combination of are actually will give rise to risk. Kung ihahalin tulad natin ito yung parang hazard na kung saan hindi naman lalabas ang risk kung walang pinagmulan. Ito yung risk forces mo. No? And of course, merong consequence yan, likelihood, event scenario, etc. etc. Okay? And this can be undertaken with varying degrees of detail and complexity. Depende yun sa kung anong level of risk assessment ang gusto mong gawin. For example, maliit lang organization mo, siguro hindi naman ganun sobrang detalyado yung gagawin mo. Pero for example, if your organization deals with multinational organization, or sabihin natin iba-iba yung mga locations mo, different remote locations, siguro yung level of risk doon mataas. So it is more complex compared to an ordinary small organization. Of course, depending on the purpose of the analysis, like what I said, and the availability of information resources available. Napaka-importante nun. Kasi kahit gustuhin ko man na mag-conduct ng highly complex risk analysis, kung wala naman akong information, saan ko siya huhugutin? At hindi naman ako bibigyan ng resources. For example, kailangan kong gawin ay Monte Carlo analysis, or for example, a very sophisticated software na kung saan mas mataas yung reliability na makukuha ng resulta. Kaso, yung information ko kulang kasi wala naman akong pagkukunan. Or for example, yung company, hindi naman ako pino-provide ng ganong resources to do the... So wala rin mangyayari. No? And analysis techniques can be qualitative, quantitative, or combination of this. Okay? Of course, different techniques can be qualitative, can be quantitative, or can be done both qualitative or quantitative. A classic example of that is, for example, yung fault tree analysis natin. Yung fault tree analysis, kung ikaw ay gusto mo lang hanapin mo lang yung root cause nung event mo o yung aksidente, pwede mo siyang pwede mo siyang qualitative lang eh. Pero kung gusto mong malaman yung probability na posibleng mangyari yung root cause na yon, kasi 'di ba sa fault tree analysis ang daming pwedeng root causes eh. So yung probability na itong root cause na to ay mas mataas ang chance na mangyari, gagamitan mo na siya ng quantitative kasi gagamit ka na ng probability doon eh, ng numero na doon. So techniques for risk analysis. So to do the risk analysis, ito nga, no? To identify risk, kailangan mo ng FIMEA or FEMECA or failure mode effect analysis or failure mode effect critical analysis. So ano nga uli yung definition na itong dalawang to? No? Anong kaibahan ng FIMEA at FEMECA? Yung FEMECA, yung criticality, meron detection aspect yan. Ibig sabihin, bago pa man nangyari yung risk na yon, may capability ng organization to detect the presence of risk. Either automated yan na may equipment kang nilagay o yung human being mismo may kapasidad siya to detect the presence of risk. Okay? Kasi expert yung tao, madali niya mapansin agad yon. Okay? So hindi lang laging ang detection mo ay equipment, no? Hindi laging ganoon. Kahit human being can be considered as a detector. So yun yung kaibahan lang ng criticality analysis at yung walang criticality analysis. So determining sources, causes, and drivers of risk, you can make use of the Ishikawa. And techniques for analyzing control. Yung bow tie analysis. Ano yung bow tie? Di ba pag sinabi mong bow tie, yung itsura ng bow tie ay parang bumubuka parehas, no, on both sides. No? Yung left side is parang bago mangyari yung event, and yung right side naman is what will be the outcome of the event. No? So yun yung bow tie analysis wherein normally we apply both the event analysis para yun sa forward thinking at yung backward thinking naman is yung fault tree analysis. And also we can make use of the hazard analysis critical control point. Ito yung normally naririnig nyo kapag ka sa food safety. Diba pagka may nakikita ka sa mga tubig o sa mga pagkain, HACCP approved. Kasi may specific assessment sa pagka nag-a-analyze sila. No? Bakit tinawag na critical control point? Kasi may tinatawag silang junction. No? Sa bawat process sa food safety, may junction kung saan doon nagsasanga-sanga yung process. Ibig sabihin, yung junction na yon o yung parang, di ba, pag ano may ibig sabihin ng junction? Intersection. No? Na pag yung intersection na target mo, nasolusyonan mo na rin yung branches niya kasi na-targetan mo na yung no, yung pinagmulan niya, no. So yun yung sa hazard analysis critical control point. So what are the techniques that we normally use for still under the risk analysis? To understand the consequence and the likelihood, like what I said, you can make use the event tree analysis, which I tinuro ko before. Fault tree analysis, kung saan meron kang aksidente, gusto mong malaman yung root causes. Also, you can make use of the techniques for analyzing dependencies and interaction like causal mapping. From the word causal mapping, mamapa mo lang kung saan yung possible causes. Cross-impact analysis, unfortunately, hindi ko pa na-encounter ito. Techniques that provide a measure of risk. To measure the risk, normally it should be quantitative process. Normally, toxicological risk assessment is one of that. Kasi sa toxicological, talagang numerical. Kasi amount of concentration of toxins in the body, that is toxicology. So normally this is being defined in the epidemiological study. Kaya kung anong meron tayo ngayon sa pandemic, inaalam kung gaano kadaming virus ang nasa loob ng katawan ng tao, and that is being tested. So all those things are part of toxicological risk assessment. So hindi pare-parehas yung impact ng dami ng impact sa katawan ng tao because of yung dami ng microorganism na nasa loob. So these are measure of risk. Yung bali at risk, unfortunately, I have not encountered this. At ang dami niyan, sabi ko, ganito kakapal yung techniques na ito. So you can choose whichever you think is appropriate in your organization. After mo siyang na-identify at na-analyze yung risk, now you need to evaluate. Now, what do you mean by evaluation? When you say evaluate, it is to support decision as it involves comparing the results of the risk analysis with established criteria. So, ibig sabihin dito, ina-assess mo na ngayon. Ibig sabihin, eto nakuha kong risk, eto yung established na criteria. Di ba sa umpisa pa lang, nag-define na tayo ng scope at criteria. Kasi importante yon eh. Yun yung pagbabasihan ng desisyon. Tatanggapin ba natin tong risk or hindi? So, solusyonan ba natin tong risk o i-abandon natin? Yun yung criteria mo eh. So, ibig sabihin, nalaman mo yung level ng risk, ano ba? Tatanggapin ko ba ito o hindi? So, the purpose is to give the decision makers way for them to do decision. Comparing the results of risk analysis with established criteria. May criteria ka where additional action is required. So this can lead to either do nothing further, wala lang. Andyan yung risk, tinanggap lang natin. Yun yung tinatawag natin na, okay, tinolerate lang natin siya. We will consider risk treatment option. Risk treatment option, ito yung diniscuss ko last time wherein I will discuss it later. Kung ano yung mga klase ng risk treatment. We need to undertake further analysis to better understand the risk. Hindi pa sapat yung nagawa natin, kaya pwede pa tayong mag-conduct uli ng further analysis dun sa risk na nalaman natin. We need to maintain existing control. Kasi sa tingin natin, sapat na yung control na nilagay natin. Or, remember, at the end, bakit tayo may risk? Kasi meron tayong gustong ma-achieve na objective. So kung sa tingin natin masyadong mataas ang risk, baka tingnan natin, baka kailangan na natin baguhin or tingnan yung objective. Baka unreasonable naman yung objective. So babalik tayo doon sa basis kung bakit nagkaroon ng risk. So ito yung mga possible decisions na gagawin ng organization when you are doing a risk evaluation. And obviously, as I said, the purpose of this is to support the decision maker in giving the decision. Excuse me. So to do the risk evaluation, of course, to get ideas, gagamitan mo na naman siya ng brainstorming or Delphi technique. Now, to determine the significance ng risk, gaano ba ka-significant itong risk na to? Paano mo, in short, kailangan mo siyang malaman kung mag-aalat ba ako ng necessary resources dito, hindi lang time, cost, money. Ay normally ginagamit natin yung Pareto analysis, yung nabanggit ko last time, yung 80-20 rule na sinasabi na if you have, 80% of the problem is caused by 20% of the process, that 80% of the outcome is caused by that 20% of the effect. Sorry. 80% of the effect is caused by 20% of the causes. So, ibig sabihin, kung na-target mo yung 20%, yung significant, ang tawag nila doon sa quality management is significant few. Okay? Kasi merong trivial many. Naririnig mo yan sa Lean Six Sigma or sa Six Sigma quality management system na yung significant few na yon may 80% impact yon. Hindi mo kailangan solvein lahat ng problema o yung risk na yon. Kailangan mo lang malaman ano doon yung significant few. At ito yung 20% ng problema. Okay? Kasi 80% noon ang mariresolve mo. And another is risk indices. Ito yung dinedefine natin yung level of risk ng bawat aspect ng organization mo. And to give options or to select options, normally dalawa yung ginagawa natin, either doing cost-benefit analysis or we can do decision tree analysis. In decision tree analysis, I have not done this, but I have come across this when I was studying Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt. Ito yung decision tree na ito yung tree na kung saan puro diamond. Di ba sa flowchart laging may diamond, which is either yes or no. Okay? Either yes or no. So, dito sa decision tree, parang series of this. Gagawin ko ba to? Ito ang mangyayari. Pag ginagawa ko to, ito mangyayari. So, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, until you come up with your best option. Yun yung decision tree analysis. No? Series of this diagram. This symbol, sorry. Now, ano ibig sabihin na encounter niyo itong word na risk appetite and risk tolerance? Kasi yung hindi accurate kasi yung common yung normally pag narinig mo yung word na appetite, ang idea mo is to gain. Kunin mo siya, no? Pero actually, in the definition of risk appetite, kapag kinumbine mo na yung risk doon sa appetite, hindi lang laging to accept, no? The definition of risk appetite is like this. Nung una, meron kang 2 points. Dito ka nag-umpisa, point A, then you want to reach to this point B. Ito yung objective mo. Okay? Now, dumating ngayon yung risk. Bakit may risk? Kasi there is a deviation from this nag-deviate pataas. At meron nag-deviate din pababa. These are not expected. Ang gusto mo, ito. This is your expectation. So this is positive while the other one is negative. Okay? So ito yung definition ng risk. So kapag positive, it means it is good kasi in-expect mo ito lang pero ang na-achieve mo mas mataas pa doon. It means that your performance is higher than what you're expecting. On the other hand, negative naman siya, bad siya kasi yung expectation mo bagsak. And ito yung expect mo, ito ang kinalabasan mo, no? Yan ang yan ang definition ng risk, no? Now, remove. Paano ko ba i-remove ito? Sorry, hindi pala. Anyway, erase. So ngayon, mali naman ako. Anyway, later. Yung kabuuan nito, yung both positive and negative risk mo, ang tawag ng risk management yan ay risk universe. Okay? It is the risk universe. Kasi yan yung kabuuan total risk na involved ng organization. It covers both the positive and the negative. That is what you call risk universe. Now, between these two graphs, still one is positive, the other one is negative. So, eto, positive pa rin naman eh. Kaya lang, lower than so yung risk universe mo, yun yung parang limit ng risk mo ng organization. You have positive risk here, and you have negative risk here. Okay? This is what they call risk tolerance. And what do you mean by risk tolerance? This is the level of risk that the organization is willing to take, willing to bear. Ibig sabihin, pag nangyari to, okay lang. Napagdesisyonan, okay lang. Gaya kung sakali, kung we will compare that sa isang gambling, pag ikaw ay pumasok sa gambling at pumunta ka sa casino, for example, nagdala ka ng ganitong halaga ng pera, yung halaga ng ganitong pera, yan yung risk tolerance mo. Manalo, matalo, eto lang ang kaya mong mawala sa'yo. Yun yung risk tolerance. So as far as the organization is concerned, the management should define up to what level of risk the organization is willing to take. Okay? Now, sa loob nun, may tinatawag na risk appetite, nagkabulol-bul na buhol-buhol na to. Ano ba to? Ano ba buhol? Ano to? Okay. Sa loob nun, sa loob ng risk tolerance mo is your risk appetite. Okay? Sa loob nun is your risk appetite. Meaning, this is the willingness of the organization to take the risk. Take note, ha? Iba yung risk tolerance, iba yung risk appetite. Yung risk tolerance, yun yung optimum amount of risk na kayang i-write off. Kahit mangyari yun, okay lang sa organization. Pero, hindi naman always na mina-maximize ng organization yung risk na yon. Obviously, kung ikaw ay organization, kahit naman sa tao, hindi mo naman ima-maximize na eto talaga yung gagastusin ko. May certain level ka lang na within that limit, you're willing to take the risk. And that is what you call risk appetite. Okay? Again, sa loob ng risk tolerance is your risk appetite. Risk tolerance is the maximum risk that the organization is willing to give. But within that risk tolerance, the organization is willing to take yung risk appetite. Sa loob ng risk appetite na yan, although wala na yan dito sa screen ko, is what they call risk capacity. Sa risk capacity, ito naman yung ability of the organization to take the risk. Parang ganito lang yan eh. Halimbawa lang sa tao. Kayang maghanda ng tao sa handaan ng 10 putahe. Yun yung risk tolerance. Yun yung maximum na kaya niyang ihanda. Pero ang capacity ng lahat ng inimbita, yun yung nakayang kainin yun, yung risk appetite. Kasi bawat tao may certain level of appetite. Yun yung maximum nila na kaya. No? Na, siyempre, pag ikaw yung naghahanda sa handaan, hindi naman eksakto lang doon sa kakainin ng tao. No? Nagpapasobra ka. No? Yun yung principle ng risk tolerance. No? Nagpapasobra ka, pero hindi ibig sabihin sasagarin mo siya. So yung risk appetite, yun yung capacity ng bawat isa, maximum na kayang kainin. Sa loob ng risk appetite, yung risk capacity, na kung saan, kahit ito yung appetite ng taong kumain, hindi naman niya ito todo, no? Hindi naman pare-pares ang tao na pag kumain, pang buffet lagi. No? Yung iba pang fine dining, o yung iba pang modest lang. Kaya niya pang kumain, hindi pa siya ganong busog, o maaaring busog na siya, pero kaya niya pa kumain. No? Pero hindi na niya ginagawa. Kaya nga, yung risk capacity is the ability. Take note of the word, ability of the organization to take the risk. Doon yung kakayahan niya, yung abilidad niya na mag-take ng risk. So kung i-refer natin sa pagkain, yun yung kakayahan niyang kumain. Mas konti doon sa kakayahan niya na mapuno yung sikmura niya. Yun yung appetite. At obviously, mas di hamak na mas maliit yun kumpara doon sa lawak ng pagkain na inihanda. Yun yung risk tolerance. Okay? At yung buong restaurant na kaya magbigay ng pagkain yung risk universe. So nakita niyo na yung level of graduation nitong no? Yung kayang i-provide ng buong restaurant is yung risk universe. Nagpahanda ka lang ng 10 potahe, yun yung risk tolerance. Bawat isa sa mga handa, sa mga attend, may kakayahang kumain ng ganong halaga, pinultiply mo siya, yun yung risk appetite, wherein you're expecting na hindi siya hindi siya lalagpas doon sa risk tolerance or doon sa dami ng hinanda mo. Pero dahil iba-iba ang bawat tao, hindi naman nila sasagarin yung pagkain. At yun yung risk capacity. Okay? That is the ability of the organization to take the risk. I hope you understood my analogy, no? Na nagutom magla ako. Alao. Tanghaling tapat. Puro pagkain na busawa. So, eto siya. To summarize, kasi ginawa ko ng drawing board yung sa screen ko. Unang figure, from point A to point B, ito yung objective mo. Okay? But considering yung definition natin ng risk, kasi nag-deviate siya rito, nag-deviate siya doon. So this is the risk due to uncertainty. And the risk universe is the total risk of exposed, kung ano yung na-expose ng organization, yung total risk niya. However, risk tolerance is only within the risk universe, wherein risk appetite is even within the risk tolerance. And sa loob nito, liitan pa natin ng konti, ito yung yan. Yan ang risk capacity. Hello? Ba't nag-record yung stop? Ba't na-record yung stop? Naririnig pa po ba ako?
Yes po, yes po, yes po.
Okay, kasi nag-message na recording stop. Sorry. So, ito yung risk acceptance. Risk acceptance A. Okay. Yung maliit na yon, yun yung risk acceptance. Risk capability, Risk capability, not risk acceptance. Risk capability, Risk capability. Iba pa kasi yung risk acceptance eh. Inyo naman ay informed decision within the risk capability. Okay. So, ang dami natin terminologies na narinig, no? Some of this may not be common. Some of this are common to us already. So, but ito yung gusto to simplify, meron tayong tinatawag cat. Total may marami akong alagang pusa. So, gusto ko siyang gamitin, no? Cat. Sa loob ng tolerance, so palaki ito, no? Sa loob ng tolerance, yung ano ba to? Sa loob ng tolerance, yung appetite. At sa loob ng appetite, yung capacity. Yan. Cut yun. Palaki siya. Okay? Now, to summarize lahat ng technique na sinabi ko, ito siya, no? Gaya nga nung, ano, no? Paano bang purpose ng brainstorming? To elicit view. Ang scope niya ay any, it can be organizational, it can be department, or it can be process. Time horizon can be short, medium, or long term. Decision level can be strategic, tactical, or operational. You don't need any information initially, and the level of the expertise is either low or moderate, and it's normally qualitative kasi sa brainstorming hindi mo naman kailangan ng numero. No? Qualitative lang siya and you need to have less effort lang. Low effort lang. Sa Delphi, ganito naman. The only difference between the two is that sa Delphi kasi kailangan mong mostly mga expert ng mga nandun. No? The level of, there's a, what you call this, medium effort to apply and the level of expertise is moderate. Again, pag sinabi moderate, ito yung mga more than 2 days training. No? Pag dinefine natin, di ba, yung low na kahit na walang training or at least hanggang 2 araw na training, meron sila. So, PMEA, the purpose of that is to identify the risk. It's normally on the department or process level. It can be short, medium, or long term. It can be tactical or operational. It depends on the application, kung ano yung information na kailangan natin, whether qualitative or quantitative. Kung quantitative siya, more information is required. So you require a moderate level of specialization. It can be qualitative, quantitative, or semi-quantitative, and it depends whether it's low or high. Kasi kung gagamitan mo siya ng FEMECA, high siya kasi nga may detection factor ka eh. And at the same time, it is quantitative. So mataas yung effort na kailangan mong gawin. Then HAZOP, Ishikawa is also there. For HAZOP, you will see na yung facilitator mo needs to have a high specialization. Kasi siya yung magdadirect ng study ninyo eh. Normally, ito yung mga department manager na nakakaalam ng process or the process engineer who knows the process. Pero yung mga participant, kahit moderate, okay lang kasi magpo-provide lang sila ng information. The Ishikawa, normally it is low to moderate on specialization and the level of information is very low. And typically, these are qualitative. In the case of bow tie analysis, it is used to analyze risk, control, and describe the risk. And either it is qualitative or semi-quantitative, and the effort is low. Same goes for the rest. The inventory analysis, either qualitative, quantitative, sabi ko nga, kung hindi mo kailangan gumamit ng probability, then qualitative is enough. Pero pag may probability ka na, then quantitative will be the outcome. And that is used to analyze the consequence and control. Kasi di ba sa ETA, meron kang event, malalaman mo kung yung mga barriers mo ay effective. No? So malalaman mo kung yung controls mo ay effective at what will be the outcome. Mangyayari ba yung event o hindi? Kasi forward thinking yung event tree analysis eh. Sa fault tree analysis, backward thinking ito, nangyari na, alamin mo yung root cause. So you are trying to analyze the likelihood. Kailan uli ba ito mangyayari? Posible ba ito uling mangyari? And you will analyze the causes. That's why FTA is normally being used as a root cause analysis method. It is high for quantitative analysis, no? And normally it is qualitative or quantitative depending, as I said, whether what you want. If you will not be using probability, then it is qualitative. And the effort is very high, either medium to high, kasi depende, no? Kung masyadong complex yung tree mo, yung branches mo, then it will become high yung effort mo. And toxicological, Pareto analysis, I just summarize all of this based on those characteristics that was mentioned earlier as far as the techniques are concerned. Now, after mo na risk identified, Nalaman mo na rin, yung nag-analyze ka na rin, no? Gamit yung mga techniques na binanggit natin. You have evaluated it against your criteria. Ngayon, alamin mo ngayon, so nakapag-decide ka na, either mababago mo pa siya, hindi mo siya babaguhin, nagtitreat ka ba o hindi. Dito na papasok yung risk treatment. This is outside of the risk assessment. Kasi sa risk treatment, nakapag-decide ka na, ang gagawin mo is, ititreat mo siya or susolusyonan mo siya. So the purpose of this is just to select the appropriate option to address the risk. Okay? So it is an iterative process, so paulit-ulit yung prosesong ito. Bakit? Kasi to formulate and select the treatment, kasi wala naman tayong kasiguraduhan eh. You are dealing with an entity or a property na produkto ng walang kasiguraduhan. Kasi risk is something that is the effect of uncertainty eh. So dahil wala siyang kasiguraduhan, hindi mo rin sigurado kung yung treatment na gagamitin mo ay magiging effective. So you need to formulate and select the risk treatment option. You need to plan and implement the risk treatment, assess its effectiveness, and decide whether the remaining risk is acceptable. Yung residual risk sa risk management ng 31,000, ito yung risk na natira after ka nag-implement ng treatment. Take note. Again, residual risk is the remaining risk after you have taken the treatment. Okay? So, if not acceptable, take further treatment. O ano-ano ba itong mga risk treatment strategies na na-discuss natin last week? Last week. Either we will do the risk elimination or avoidance. As I said, ang kaibahan ng elimination sa avoidance, yung elimination, hindi mo na talaga gagawin yung activity. Discontinue the activity. Tapos, walang activity, walang risk. Yun yung elimination. Kasi, you have decided after you did your evaluation na unacceptable yung risk mo. Hindi mo kaya. Or, you will use an alternative process or activity, which is avoidance, so that your risk will be more acceptable. Yun yung risk elimination or risk avoidance. Okay? Yung risk reduction naman, you're trying to reduce the likelihood of the consequence of the risk to an acceptable level. So, ibig sabihin, meron pinag-usapan na organization sa loob ng risk capacity na yun, yung acceptability level, na hanggang ganito lang. Sa loob yun ng risk tolerance pa rin. Okay? Keeping view that the elimination will excessively impact organization's time or expense. Itong dalawang ito, ang tinatawag natin na tinuro natin nakaraan na loss control management. LCM. Kasi, ang epekto lagi nitong dalawang ito ay mawalan ng or negative lagi. Kasi as far as the organization is concerned, lagi siya nababawasan. I-stop mo yung activity, wala kang risk, wala rin kita. You will choose, you will choose a different process or activity, maaaring mas mahal yun, o maaaring ang raw material na gagamitin mo mas mahal. Mababa nga yung risk, pero mas magastos. And here, risk reduction. So, siyempre, para mapababa mo yung either likelihood or yung consequence, maglalagay ka ng control measure. Right? Ang ganda pala ng control measure. At yung control measure na yun, syempre, may cost involved doon. Resources yun. Time and expense yun. So, kaya siya tinatawag na loss control management kasi you will adopt something and you're trying to control. Another thing is, on the part of the organization, ayaw mong magastusan ng sobra-sobra, pero at the end of the day, gagastos ka pa rin. So, kahit pa paano, may loss pa rin doon yung organization. Hindi nga na sobra. Okay? Now, ito naman yung another set. Ito yung tinatawag nating risk financing, RF. Kung saan, ito talagang totally sinashoulder ng organization kung ano magiging gastos. Either you will share the risk or you will transfer the risk. Either normally it is through insurance company, a third-party company, na hindi nga ikaw ang nagtatrabaho, ang pinasa mo sa kanila yung risk, pero babayaran mo sila para lang saluhin yung risk na yun. Or you will share that risk among other organization. Kasi for example, like in the construction industry, hindi lang naman isa o dalawang organization ang nag-involve dyan. Maraming multi organizational site yan. And of course, last is what you call risk retention. Na kung saan, willing yung organization to accept the risk. Kasi nakita ng organization na mas mataas yung benefit na makukuha nila as compared to the level of risk na may encounter nila. Ibig sabihin, kikita yung kumpanya, for example, 10 or $100 million. Kahit ba sabihin mo mataas yung risk niyan, kung kaya naman nila maglagay ng controls that will lessen that will lessen the level of risk, kahit gumastos sila ng mahalagang 2 million doon sa sa control, they will take that level of risk kasi nga sa tingin nila by accepting that risk they will gain more as compared dun sa mawawalan sila. So however, risk retention can be informed or uninformed kasi yung informed, alam mo yung risk na involved, no? Sinabihan ka, nagdesisyon ka, inaccept mo siya. Pero syempre hindi naman lahat obvious. Maaring marami kang nakaligtaan o maaring hindi sinabi sa'yo. And along the way, within the project, doon mo lang siya nalaman. And that is what you call uninformed. And whether you like it or not, tinanggap mo na yung project, so tatanggapin mo na rin yung risk doon. So that is what you call risk retention. That's why they call this risk financing. Because the organization is financing the level of risk, okay, in the organization. Okay? Now, kung babalikan natin yung drawing ng risk management, sa gilid nun may tinatawag, as a lalim na ito pala, ilalim ito, no? Recording and reporting. So it means that everything should be recorded and reported. The objective of this is to communicate risk management activities and outcomes across the organization. Kasi normally sa organization, hindi lang naman kahit sabihin natin isang tao ang nagdidesisyon overall, yung top management. Pero may mga board yan, board of directors, may mga investors yan, may other stakeholders yan, na dapat informed din sila sa decision. No? So dapat yan recorded and reported yung kung ano man yung mga ginagawa ng organization, especially in managing the risk. It assists with stakeholders, including those with responsibility and accountability of risk management activity. Sa ISO 31000, may tinatawag na risk owner, na kung saan ito ay isang tao or isang entity or isang organization na kung saan ang responsibilidad niya at ang accountabilidad niya ay to take care of that particular risk. Okay? So, overall in charge siya kumbaga dun sa particular risk na yun. So, the techniques that are normally used in recording and reporting are risk register and consequence likelihood matrix. Ito yung consequence likelihood matrix. Ito yung tinatawag natin na risk assessment matrix sa occupational health and safety natin. Yung matrix between severity and probability. Ito yung katulad din noon sa consequence and likelihood. Okay? Now, communication and consultation, kung babalikan mo yung risk management, ito ay nakatagilid, no? Nasa vertical yan, no? Na kung saan it affects all stages of the risk management process. So, the purpose is to assist relevant stakeholders in understanding the risk, the basis on which decisions are made. Napaka-importante kasi in communication because it promotes awareness and understanding of risk. So sa bawat stages ng risk management, dapat na i-communicate ito sa mga stakeholder. Kasi dito ka lang naman makakakuha sa kanila ng ng suporta eh. Kapag hindi nila naintindihan, hindi ka makakuha ng suporta sa kanila. And consultation involves obtaining feedback and information to support decision making. So both hand yan, no? Communication and consultation. So it brings different ideas, different areas of expertise together for each step of risk management process. So napaka-importante ng communication kasi different stakeholders have different objectives, meaning meron silang gustong mangyari. And to satisfy all of the requirements of different objectives, dapat maging involved sila. Kaya nga, inaalam mo, no, if you will recall sa environmental management system, inaalam natin yung level of um, power and influence ng bawat stakeholder. Uh, kasi may kung ang itong stakeholder na to katulad ng regulator ay hindi mo masatisfy, baka sarado yung kumpanya mo. Pag hindi mo naman na-satisfy, for example, yung client mo, yung customer mo, baka malugi ka rin. No? So inaalam mo yung level of influence ng bawat stakeholder. So you can only obtain their support through communication and consultation. And likewise sa communication and consultation, yung monitoring and review should be done also at each and every step of the risk management process from the what you call this from the identification of risk down to the risk treatment. So the purpose is to assure and improve the quality and effectiveness of the design, implementation, and outcome. And it should be planned part of the risk management process with responsibility. So it all takes place in different stages, and the results should be incorporated throughout the performance management, measurement, and reporting activities. Okay? To summarize what I said, this is based on the 31,010 of 2019. Ito yung mga examples na binigay niya doon. Kinuha ko lang yung ilan doon for my presentation. Dito, makikita mo na yung communication and consultation are all at different stages kaya ng monitoring and review. At meron dito B.1, B.1, B.2, lahat ng descriptions niya andi dito. Okay? 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 10. Okay? At different stages of the risk management process, ay ito yung mga techniques na dapat natin gamitin. No? These are just, actually, kahit ito ay representation lang ng napakarami pang nasa listahan nila. No? And take note of this arrow. No? This is an iterative process. Circular. Umiikot. Sabihin, it will be a continuous process because our objective is always for improvement. Okay? Just to give you, so that's all. So I will just share with you classic example of, for example, this is a classic example of um, this is a classic example of call this a risk treatment plan. When, for example, someone will be doing a risk treatment plan, you need to define your risk. Then you need to define what is the event. For example, there is a compliance risk. I just wrote it down here. Failure to satisfy compliance obligation due to lack of compliance training and or compliance monitoring, leading to increased financial penalty or reputational damage. My treatment option is risk avoidance. I don't want to do that. So my plan is to introduce and implement the following. Identify the compliance requirement, determine the appropriate mechanism, review and evaluate compliance obligation. What are the needed resources? How do I measure the performance? And who is the owner of this risk? And what is the time plan? This is an example of risk treatment plan. I made this because this is one of the questions during when I was taking my postgraduate diploma in occupational health and safety management. So this is one of the questions being asked. Okay, you need to define what are the values, develop a practicable action plan that improve controls to reduce strategic risk. Now, another thing that I wanted to show, like for example, this one uh, here. Sorry, sorry, not this one. Yeah, this one. Here, the example is an assign an ownership and accountability for strategic, aggregated, and dynamic risk. So ano yung aggregated? Ito yung pinagsama-samang risk. Dynamic kasi nagbabago siya through time. Okay? So my example was, for example, an strategic risk, considering it is at a corporate level, the risk owner might be a senior responsible owner. Normally, it's a CEO. So the risk at strategic level must be owned by the CEO as it requires someone who has an authority and accountability to allocate needed resources to manage the risk. And what are those accountabilities? These are my accountabilities I mentioned as far as the CEO is concerned. For aggregated risk, dahil kung magkakasama siya, it is the program manager or the department manager as he is aware of the level of risk impact on each project or operation, as well as impact to the project of when the individual risk level is combined. And these are the accountabilities. For dynamic risk, maaaring yung business change manager o kung ano mang title ng ano. Kung saan, yung business change manager is the one that knows what are the changes in the organization. So he knows what are the dynamic risks involved in the organization. So as he focuses on the variation or changes in the project, to which he manages and coordinates the resolution of risk related to operational performances and business achievement. And these are the accountabilities. So ito lang yung mga questions na nung time na nag-aaral ako noon. Ito yung mga tanong at ito yung. So partially, I have an idea on how to do this strategic risk management apparently because of this. So, but masarap sana na mabigyan ng pagkakataon to do this thing on the actual kasi it really helps the organization if in case that this was done perfectly. So I will stop this. I will stop share and we can start if you have some kind of what you call this, questions.
Thank you, Sir Roy.
I hope that
So far, we only have one question. So I invite everyone, kung may tanong po kayo, you can just raise your hand and you can type your question on the group chat or open your mic and say it. So we have one question po earlier from Sir Albino.
mm,
Suppose ang Makati government ay may specific objective in relation sa COVID-19 prevention program ay may vaccinated at least 75% of its population. Ano po ba ang mga strategies that shall guide them to prevent uncertainty of their objectives? What is the role of risk management to achieve their goal or objectives?
dalawa to, no? One is, ano po ba ang mga strategies that shall guide them to prevent uncertainty? Technically speaking, there is no possibility to prevent uncertainty because from the word itself, uncertainty, you are not sure about this. Okay? The only thing that you can do is to reduce the impact of that uncertainty. And that, of course, will reduce also the impact of the risk to the organization. Okay, so there's no way for us to avoid or to prevent uncertainty. The only way for us to do is to do the due diligence of doing the risk management process. We need to cover as much as we can all the possible risks involved as far as this project is concerned by the Makati government. So from supply chain to financial aspect of providing the project, meaning the vaccination, um, yung logistical aspect nun kasi syempre may ano yan temperature condition ang vaccine dapat ma-consider mo yun. Um, of course, the health and safety protocols during the vaccination uh, program itself kasi baka mangyari matulad ng nangyari sa Maynila na ginawang parang this just I heard, no, maaaring mali ako, na parang inopen to the public at maraming dinumog siya, so nawala yung health and safety protocol na social distancing at ano, no. So lahat ng ito pinag-iisipan, and you need to consider that as part of your overall risks na nag-uusapan. And doon nga papasok yung identification. And afterwards, you need to do the proper analysis. No? We need to consider whether ano ba, are we going to do this thing, this particular action so that we can reduce the risk, or ba rin mas lalo pa tayong mahirapan kung gagawin natin yun, no? So, you need to analyze the level of risk for each and every identified risk. And as I said from the start, before you do the risk assessment, you need to define the criteria, up to what level the organization or the Makati government is willing to take the risk. Kailangan ba na sila talaga magawa nito? Baka pwede naman nilang i-depute ito sa bawat ospital na nakapaloob sa loob ng Makati, kasi parang ano lang siya, district lang siya, kasi if I remember sa Makati, ganun naman sa Maynila, kahit sa Makati, may district or mga barangay. So mas maliit ang sakop, mas maliit ang chance na magsama-sama, or depende. So lahat yan pinag-iisipan kasi part yun ng criteria na isa-set ng Makati government whether they are willing to take the risk. And last but not the least, kapag nasa-decision na lahat yun, meron ka na set na risk, na criteria, inalam mo naman kung anong level ng risk mo through your analysis. Ano ba, tatanggapin ba natin? Hindi natin tatanggapin? Kung tatanggapin natin, ano yung mga necessary nating controls na dapat i-implement to reduce that occurrence, to reduce the level of risk na pinag-uusapan natin within the acceptable level na dinefine ng ating organization. So, unfortunately, there's no way for us to prevent uncertainty, but the only way for us to move forward, kasi lahat naman ng ginagawa ng tao ay may risk na involved. The only thing is we just wanted to make an informed and intelligent decision whenever we do something, and that is based on risk assessment. The next question was, what is the role of risk management to achieve their goal or objective? Nabanggit ko na ata, nasabi ko na mismo eksakto yung sagot para dito. The role of the risk management is to have a systematic way of evaluating the condition or the situation in such a way that every decision makers, all stakeholders involved in this project are aware of the implication of the project, the risk involved in each and every step of the process, so that we will be able to achieve our objectives at the least possible risk present. So I hope I answered the question.
Thank you, Sir Roy. Sir Albino, na-answer naman po ata yung question, no? Or do you have any follow-up question po?
Okay naman, malinaw pa sa background ni Doc Roy. Oo. But siguro ang follow-up ko lang ron, Doc, when it comes to approach sa government and private institution, yung risk management, ano yung pinaka-thin line ng pagkakaiba nila, no? Kasi yung risk management, isa lang yung definition niya, the effect of uncertainty, no? So, but when it comes sa yung risk management implementation or application sa private tsaka sa government, ano yung pinaka-basic na pagkakaiba nila? Parang ganun.
Yung siguro, yung bureaucracy part. Kasi ang sa private, kasi alam mo, defined kung sino yung, as I said, there is what you call supposed to be a risk owner. So meaning either it's a person or a group or an entity that will take care of the particular risk. So sa organization kasi mas maliit plus ang scope, at the same time alam mo yung line of reporting sa organizational structure. Ang problema kasi sa government, hindi ko alam kung kung masyado kung talagang malinaw siya o hindi kasi ang mahirap nito isa kasi sa risk involved sa government is yung regulatory or compliance risk kasi they themselves who are implementing are subject to changes of their own regulations.
Correct.
So probably that is one of the reasons that the bureaucratic aspect of that, unlike in organizational, from the start, it is being defined by the policy of the organization. So hindi sila pwedeng gumalaw basta-basta. There is a restriction on, okay, this should be done. We need to go through this. And as far as the culture is concerned, mas madaling i-manage ang kultura ng private kaysa kultura ng isang city or isang bansa. Considering we're talking about a government entity here.
Siguro. Tama naman, Sir Roy, siguro. Tsaka nagkakaiba sila when it comes to flexibility as well as limited yung resources din ng private. Because alam mo na, profit-oriented sila. Magkaiba talaga when it comes sa government which is service-oriented. No? Okay, thank you, boss. Thank you, Bebe Doc.
Naintindihan
So
niyo
we
po ba?
have, yes,
Siya
please.
ang tahimik.
So may isa pa po tayong tanong from Sir Mark. What is the main significant difference between ISO 31000-2018 against COSO risk management framework?
Actually, napakaliit lang ng difference niya. Ang COSO kasi is primarily made for enterprise risk management. When you say about the enterprise risk management, as what I said last time, the traditional risk management is that each and every department or sector of the organization are handling their own risks. Ang ginawa kasi ng enterprise risk management, sinentralize na lahat sa corporate. Strategic lahat. So lahat ng objectives ng bawat sector ng organization emanates or starts from the top. So lahat ng gagawin ng nasa taas ay parang bottom to top, top to bottom ang mangyayari. Lahat ng information dadalhin sa taas, mag-uusapan, tapos gagamitin, i-implement sa baba. Yun yung enterprise risk management. Para ang mangyayari nito, hindi gumagalaw itong departamento na ito that handles this type of risk independently with other department that handles other type of risk. So ibig sabihin, from the start, coordinated na lahat ng mga risk na involved at yung na gagawin. Unfortunately, yun sa enterprise. No? Unfortunately, mahirap doon sa enterprise risk management kapag hindi ganun ang level of commitment and leadership at the same time, level of resources provided, mahihirapan yung organization kasi nga sabi ko, ganun katindi yung information at yung effort na kailangan i-provide sa enterprise risk management. And that was the definition of COSO. COSO was made for enterprise risk management. Ang ISO 31000-2018, if you will recall my presentation, it was made so adaptable and flexible that it can be implemented at every level or at different various levels of the organization. So kahit sa project level, when you are doing project management, you can apply risk management. If you are doing some programs only like Occupational Health and Safety Management Program at gusto mong gamitan siya ng risk management ng 31,000, okay lang. So, ibig sabihin, napaka-generic niya. Actually, yun yung main difference ng the previous version ng risk management na 2009 dito sa 2018 kasi mas ginawa nilang simple and adaptable at the same time flexible siya. So, although the approach, you will notice, sabi ko nga gano'n, di ba, pwedeng gamitin siya sa strategic level, pwede siya gamitin sa tactical level, pwedeng gamitin sa operational level. So, ibig sabihin, at the end of the day, your objective is to satisfy the objective regardless of the level at which the objective is being considered. At the end, yun lang ang habol mo. Hindi katulad sa COSO, talagang enterprise risk management lang talaga siya.
Thank you, sir.
I answered the question.
Are there any other questions pa po?
Sir, question, sir. Question, sir.
Apa?
As Engineer, good afternoon. Si Delpin po to, sir.
Opo.
Sir,
Good
sir,
afternoon
I just want to inquire, sir. Nakabili po ako sa DTI ng ISO 31000 Risk Management Assessment Technique. Ito ba yung ginagamit ni sir?
Yes, yan po. Yan yan.
Okay, good. And the other one, sir.
Binili
Philippine
niyo
National
po? Excuse me,
Yes, yes.
binili niyo?
Yes, I took my seminar sa PTTC Department of Trade Industry. Kumuha po ko ng ISO sa HACCP, sir, HACCP. High control system sa food system. Then the other one, sir.
HACCP po, HACCP.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh. Ang presyo, sir, 500 pesos bawat isang ISO. Sa DTI, sa Makati, Buendia. Yes, yes, this one, sir, tama.
Okay po. Just for information, dinownload ko lang po ito, libre.
Oh, dito sa Pilipinas, sir, 500 to sa DTI, sir.
Sana
Yes,
po sinabi niya sa akin, bibigay ko sa inyo yung link.
Uy, sayang ko. Pero that was 2018, engineer. I took that 2018.
Ay, baka po updated na yan kasi ang bagong version po ay
Kaya nga, sir.
2019.
2000, sir? 2018?
19.
19. O, tama, 2019. Tama siya. Right, oh. So, thank you very much for information. Tinanong ko lang, engineer, baka mamaya may pagbabago yung ISO ng risk assessment. Thank you very much, engineer. Salamat po.
Latest po ito, latest.
Thank you, Sir Delphin. Other questions pa po that you would like to say, or you can just type it on the chat box. Mukhang
Naintindihan niyo
wala
po
na.
ba? Kasi dalawa lang yan eh. Pag tahimik, either okay, naintindihan or walang nakaintindi.
mukhang na-absorb naman, for sure yan. And kung di man, the good thing is mababalikan nila eh. May recording naman po tayo.
Ito nga kasi napakalawak na itong risk management. Actually, I'm not saying na very limited itong ganitong klase ng discussion and training, no? Pero very seldom that you will encounter this kasi it's very difficult to teach. Honestly, nung tinuro ko ito, I need to read a lot kasi una, sabi ko nga ganun, very, very limited yung kumpanya na gumagawa nito. So, you know, sometimes people tend to appreciate only when you encounter this kind of management system. Second, ang dami kasi niya na ang dami niya kasing application, and the techniques itself are masyadong madami. I mean, you can ask that from Mr. Delphin Gonzalez kasi from qualitative, quantitative, semi-quantitative, and last time when I taught, nung tinuro ko yung FIMEA analysis, FIMEA, yung HAZOP study, at inventory analysis, FTA, isa lang ito sa napakaraming techniques na pwede ninyong gamitin. You know, so unfortunately, because of the complexity of the process itself, ay maaari hindi nyo agad maintindihan or ma-appreciate ito. But honestly speaking, if you know the background of this risk management approach, honestly speaking, this is really an efficient-driven management system kasi it makes our managing of the risk systematically or systematized. Kasi ang problema sa ngayon, you may correct me if I'm wrong, pag tayo nagde-define ng risk and opportunities ng ating organization as far as environmental or kahit sa quality or kahit sa occupational health and safety na, paano tayo nagde-define ng risk and opportunities natin? Di ba para tumitingin lang naman tayo sa I don't know whether you have a system in place. I wanted to get a feedback from you. Paano ninyo ina-identify kung ano yung mga risk ng kumpanya ninyo? Talaga nga ba na nagtatanong kayo sa mga top management mo at nagmumula ito sa top management? We are supposed to be galing ito sa top management? Or tayo lang yung nagde-define ng sarili natin because it is required for us to define it in the first place. So, etong mga klase ng system na to, itong 31,000 na to, is very important kasi at the end, gaya ng nangyayari nga itong pandemic, as far as history is concerned, walang gaanong nag-focus ng gusto sa health aspect ng organization. Mostly safety, quality, environment, very seldom yung health. Kahit nga siguro sa hindi lahat ng organization nakakapag-monitor ng sickness absences nila, no? Then all of a sudden nangyari itong pandemic. Unfortunately, hindi lahat prepared. And eto nga, dito kasi after netong risk management na to, and I would invite si Sarah Ul to teach this, kasi katulad after neto, dito mo ngayon malalaman kung effective o hindi yung risk treatment mo. Dahil pag hindi effective ang risk treatment mo, dito na papasok yung crisis management. At kailangan mo dito ng business continuity. At ang expert dito si Sarah Ul, Tolentino.
Ako hindi patay tayo dyan, sir.
So yung business continuity management means if something goes wrong, unfortunately, there is a way for us to survive until such time na makarecover yung organization, and that is business continuity management. So, konektado lahat yan, no? From individual risk management of different principles or standard to an overall risk management, which is ISO 31000, to business continuity management. Kasi at the end, doon makaka-recover yung kumpanya and then babalik siya sa normal ulit. So, yun pa.
Alright. Malinaw pa. Hindi, sir. Hindi totoong hindi na-absorb. Actually, may mga message nga sa akin na gusto niya na mag-skip kanina. Kaya lang, parang panthesis daw yung naririnig niya. So, kaya hindi na rin siya umalis. Ang tinanong pa sa akin kung pwede na rin siya kumain.
Yun yung problema, alas 12 kasi.
Hindi na, kaya nga sa Pilipinas. Anyway, salamat Dr. Ray. Meron pa ba kayong tanong sa Makati ho, sa Pilipinas? Baka meron po kayong clarification. Habang nag-isip po kayo, batiin mo natin ng happy birthday kay Mr. Ferdinand Taisa. Di po yata ni Ferds ngayon. Happy birthday, Ferdinand. Happy birthday.
Maligayang kaarawan, Sir Ferdy. Sana magpapansit ka man lang yan. Ano ba yun?
Hindi na sa tao.
Happy birthday po.
Ay, thank you, thank you.
Sige po, meron pa ba kayong tanong? Si Sir Edgardo. Si Ma'am Gisa, nandiyan pala. Ma'am Gisa, baka may tanong po kayo about risk management. Para may timbre mo kay Sir J kung paano.
Wala naman po, sir. Nakadalawang session na ako kay Sir Roy.
Nananahimik ka dyan, ha? Hindi kita napansin. Hindi ko nabasa yung message mo.
Hindi ako kayo napansin.
Nag-acknowledge si Ma'am Gisha dun sa training. Maganda daw talaga.
Happy birthday nga po pala kay Sir Ferdinand Taisa.
Sir Ferdy, alam na this.
Sir Ferdy, ano na ba? Birthday.
Nag-invite si
Hello,
Ferdy.
thank you.
Nag-invite si Ferdy kaya alam kung pupunta raw kayo, wag daw kayo magmamas. Sabi niya. Wag daw kayo mag-face mask. Tapos doon daw kayo sa Dubai Police magkita.
Redemptorist.
Sir Delphin, may tanong pa ako kayo. Paka-clarification kasi maganda to. Actually,
Tanong ko kay engineer.
sige po, tanong niyo po. Opo.
Okay. Engineer, no? I took my 45001 awareness, yung occupational safety health management system. So one of my goal is to become a lead auditor of occupational safety health management system. Ako po ay bagong safety officer. Do you think it's recommendable to take my lead auditor because I finished my awareness 45001 plus internal audit ng occupational safety management? I'm planning to take lead auditor. Do you think is it recommendable for me as safety officer in relation to our topic, sir?
Una-una po, yun po bang organization niya ay meron ng established na occupational health and safety management system?
Yes, meron po, sir. This belong to security agency. We are certified ISO 19001 and certified 45001 occupational safety health management system, sir.
Meron na po. Okay.
Yes.
Ito pa yung opinion ko lang. Marami dito ng mga lead auditor kasi nung nag-take ako ng lead auditor sometime ng 2006-2007 pa, noong mga panahong masyado pang bago yung lead auditor na yan. Ngayon kasi parang every other person lead auditor na. Nung time na yon, ang pagkakaalam ko, pagka ikaw kumuha na ng lead auditor, normally these are those people that are assigned to develop the occupational health and safety management system of the organization. Kasi sa tinuturo ng lead auditor, ang scope ng lead auditor training is actually from scratch, from the development side of the management system to until it reaches to the point na yung organization ay makakuha ng certification.
Yes.
Okay? Kaya naitanong ko sa inyo yan kung bakit kung meron na kayo established at certified na kayo, kasi ibig sabihin meron na kayo, no? Ang kagandahan lang kasi po ng may lead auditor certified lead auditor ka is that you are given that luxury of conducting training to other members of the organization who wants to become an internal auditor. Apart from that, you can do also second party audit kung saan nagagawa mong mag-audit ng mga supplier nyo, yung mga vendor nyo. Okay? Yun na hindi nagagawa ng internal auditor kasi the internal auditors from the word itself is only limited within the organization.
Organizations.
Okay? Ngayon po, kung meron na sa inyo doon sa organization ninyo na meron ng lead auditor that can lead the audit internally and second party audit, para sa akin, if for application purposes, kung hindi nyo naman din magagamit ng gusto, I would suggest na mag-internal auditor na lang kayo. Sabi ko nga gano'n, nung time kasi na kinuha ko yung lead auditor, that was the lead auditor ng 18,001 during that time, bagong-bago ang 18,000 noong 1999. 1999 version pa nun ata. Wala pa kami ng management system. So talagang isa ako doon sa mga nagbuo nung management system. No? And the same time, also 14,001 that time. So as far as the applicability is concerned, nagamit ko ng gusto kasi nga nung time yung dine-develop namin. Although it was very difficult because to develop something new during that time, the risk assessment was the first terminology that I have encountered sa occupational health and safety na panahon. Wala pa kasi, yun ang kauna-una kasi na gumamit ng risk-based approach, ang 18,001. So gaya ng opinion ko lang, kung hindi naman din masyadong gagagamit at the same time po, with all due respect, ako rin naman po ay isang nagtapos ng lead auditor. But whenever I am being asked or someone is asking me whether am I a lead auditor, I always say that I'm an auditor, not a lead auditor. What made it different? Ang lead auditor po kasi normally it's being assigned a title, normally being assigned by IAQ, na kung saan ang trabaho lang talaga ng lead auditor ay mag-audit. Ito yung ginagawa ng mga yung mga certifying body. Okay, mag-audit lang sila mag-audit kasi meron yang dami ng ilang oras kang nag-audit, sinasubmit yan para maging lead auditor ka. Meron yang level na pag na-achieve mo na yon, doon ka lang magiging recognized sa lead auditor. Okay? Hindi ibig sabihin na nagtapos ka ng lead auditor training ay lead auditor ka na. At unfortunately, maraming nagtapos. Kaya ako nabanggit na nung panahon namin na 2006-2007 at ilan lang kami mga nagtapos ng lead auditor, masasabi mo na talagang dumaan sa procedure na matino. Ngayon, hindi ko po alam. I cannot speak for others. But what I'm saying is that some people who happen to have this lead auditor certification couldn't even speak in front to conduct or to open an audit. Hindi alam kung paano mag-opening meeting. So parang tapos trying to say na lead auditor ako. I'm saying na hindi ko minamaliit, no? Sabi ko nga kahit ako ay lead auditor, nag-trained ako ng lead auditor. But if someone asks me, I'm not a lead auditor. I'm just an auditor. I'm an auditor of a second party or either an internal auditor. But never I claim to be a lead auditor kasi lead auditor means something accountability of and responsibility. Kasi ikaw yung nakikipag-uusap sa management to convince them, to discuss with them the details of the audit finding. Unfortunately, hindi lahat ng mga nagtapos ay kayang gawin yun. No? And I commend those people na talagang they are practicing the auditing. at umabot sa stage na kaya nilang gawin yun. No? Although I'm doing the actual audit at alam yun nila Durafil, I am leading the audit in the company and doing even auditing sa second party, but I never claim to be a lead auditor. I myself also is the one designing our own audit. Alam ni Durafil yan kapag may mga audit checklist na ako mismo yung nag-e-edit kung ano dapat. And speaking in front of the management, sa mga managers, trying to convince them at kahit minsan nakikipagtalo na ako. And that is the job of the lead auditor. You need to convey to them and let them understand to get their support, the logic and the wisdom behind the lead audit practice. But I never claim to be a lead auditor, although I am a certified lead auditor. I hope hindi po ako naka-offend.
Engineer, thank you very much for your advice. We really appreciated that. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
Pero
you po.
sir, kung ako tatanungin nyo, Sir Delphin, ang ma-advise ko sa inyo, wala namang masama na habang bago kayong safety officer, nagbi-venture na kayo para maging isang auditor. Kasi sa Pilipinas, ang labanan dyan, ano yan eh, baga kailangan capable ka sa, flexible ka, tsaka capable ka sa maraming bagay. Tama po ba yan, Sir Roy? Alam naman, dito sa atin kasi, pwede kaming mag-training ng as internal auditor. Yung sa lead auditor, medyo mahirap, tsaka mas mahal. Pero kung may sponsor ho kayo, kunin nyo. Sayang naman. No? Tuturuan kayo ni Sir Roy kung paano maging lead auditor. Kahit hindi niya kiniklaim.
Ang point ko lang po naman dito is kung provided ng company yon at kayo naman ay attend lang at kahit siguro hindi lang lead auditor, baka meron pa kayo pang postgraduate studies o kahit mag-PhD kayo, kunin nyo. Provided naman yun eh. Pero gagastos ka, tapos hindi mo naman din i-execute kasi limited lang naman yung exposure mo, tapos hindi mo siya magagamit. Doon nga, sabi ni Sir Albino na labanan niya sa Pilipinas is paramihan ang kaya mong gawin. Unfortunately, kapag hindi mo napanindigan yan, at marami rin ako nakikilalang ganyan na ilagay lead auditor, if I'm one of those people in the ad hoc committee at nag-claim ka sa akin ng lead auditor, then I will be asking lots of questions to you. Because it means that you know the A to Z of the management system that you are leading, that you are auditing.
Siguro sir, pwede nyo consider yung IMS internal auditor. Mas maganda yun. Doon kayo magsimula sa IMS, internal auditor. Para mas okay po yan. Okay. Yung kakilala ko, nag-apply sa amin lead auditor eh. Nagtrabaho siya sa battery recycling plant. Kaya pala lead auditor, puro lead pala yung audit niya. Pero hindi siya, hindi ISO.
Pero ako doon sir, sa toxicological risk assessment na, wow.
Po. Alright. Meron pa po ba? Sec, balik po sa inyo.
So maraming salamat po and have a great day everyone. Thank you.